Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to learn the very basics regarding proxy rotation technique. So let's consider the following example. Here we have a multiple pages to crawl in order to extract our data. And the pretty common approach to do that would be to make HTTP requests to the particular URL endpoints within a loop. And in that case, the target server that we're scraping might have considered your program to be a bot, which it literally is. So at the very end you can end up getting blocked. So in order to avoid that sort of scenario, one can use the proxy rotation technique, which is literally a faking of IP address for each outgoing HTTP request you're making. So we will be testing our requests. We'll be inspecting our request using this sort of a debugging module of my web scraping info website, and this API endpoint in particular would be used actually in order to inspect that sort of IP. So in this case, this is my normal IP, and when we'll be making our request, this IP should have been changed to whatever we put there. So one little more thing to consider here is actually we first need to obtain a list of working proxies in order to achieve our rotation technique. So actually we need proxies to rotate first, so we need to obtain some sort of a list, and also bearing in mind that we actually looking for only for elite proxies to make sure that your IP is going to be faked just as expected, and also those that support HTTPS. And one last thing to consider is that I've created this sort of experimental Python development environment for you guys to be able to follow this tutorial completely in browser without a need to install Python on your local environment. Well, of course, if you have that, that's just pretty nice. So if you're excited, let's actually start writing some code. So first we need to quickly draft our scraper that would obtain the list of fresh proxies. So let's first import requests and import requests, and from BS4 import beautiful soup. Okay, so now let's create a response object that would be equal to requests.get and HTTPS free proxy list.net, which is the address of the proxy list site here. And let's try to print the response.text to make sure that our request is working correctly as expected. Okay, so here we have our response. Now it's time to parse the content. So in order to do that, I create the content variable equals to beautiful soup, and the response.text would be the first argument to consider, while the LXML parser, the parser to parse this content with, would be the second argument. And now let's extract the table out of the content basically. So table would be equal content.find. Well, we're looking for the very first table out there, so just specifying the table tag would be just enough. And let's now actually try to print our table to make sure that we did extract this correctly. Okay, so yeah, so here is our table. Now let's extract our rows out of the table. So in order to do that, I can simply say rows equals table dot, in this case we want to find all and specify the tr tag, which stands for table row. So we just have a look at our rows at the moment here. Then actually here is the rows we're supposed to work with, and the very last thing is actually to extract our columns in the form of Python list. So I can simply say calls equals, now I'll use the list comprehension technique, so I need to loop over the rows first. So I can simply say row in rows, row for row in rows, like this. So just have a look at the columns now. It would be look as following. Okay, and now basically for each row we need to extract all the data columns here. So I'm not sure why this. Okay, just hold on a sec, guys. Okay, it was just a simple timeout error. Okay, so now we need to extract a list of columns from every row. So in order to do that, we need simply to say row dot find all, and in this case we're looking for the TD tags, which stands for table data, but also we need to append them to a new sort of a list. So we can say column dot text for column in row find all. And now let's actually run this code one more time. Okay, so now we have our table like data, so it's the list of lists. Now let's actually the next thing to consider here is just to extract elite proxies supporting HTTPS. And in order to do that, let's first look over our columns list. So I can simply say for call in calls. Well, let's first print the call. Okay, so to have a new lines after each one. And now let's count our indexes. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if index 4 is equal to elect proxy and 4, 5, 6 and index 6 is equal to yes, so see that the index 6 is responsible for this proxy is in regards to HTTPS. In that case, we want to append this sort of a proxy to the results list. So let's actually create a proxies variable that would be storing our elite proxies. So here we can simply say if column indexed by 4, which is the proxy type, is equal to elite proxy, and column indexed by 6, okay, is equal to yes, which means it supports that means it supports HTTPS. Well, in this case we want to, well, first let's actually print what we want to append. So we want to print HTTPS, and now this is the request library specific proxy definition, so just bearing that in mind, this format. So HTTPS and then plus column indexed by 0, which would be the IP address itself, and then we need to specify the column, and after column indexed by 1, so to specify the corresponding port. So let's try to run this one more time. Okay. Oh, list index is out of range. Okay, so let's first actually try. Let's try this and just accept the exception. Well, that's because the very first you remember the very first element was actually empty. That's why this indexes couldn't be fetched, couldn't be retrieved basically. So just pass here. Trying this one more time. Okay, so here we have the list of our HTTP proxies, HTTPS proxies. That all of those are elite ones. So now we can simply append these values to our proxies list. So I can simply say proxies dot append and this sort of value now. Okay, so from now on we can actually start implementing our fetch method that would be trying proxies, and if the proxy works it would return the response, otherwise it would be trying another proxy until it actually works. It's not yet a proxy rotation itself, even though the proxy rotation is absolutely the same, but you have to bear in mind that when you're using a free proxies from say freeproxylist.net, not all of those would definitely work. So it's really a good idea and good practice to first actually try to test whether the proxy works or not. So if it works, it will just return you the response you need, and otherwise it just would take another and another and another one until you hit the one that actually works for you. So let me actually show you this because it's far easier to see rather than to explain. Okay, so let's define the fetch method here. That would be taking the URL, and well, also it would be taking parameters a little bit later on, but first let's just have the only URL here. So let's try to print here trying proxy, and here we'll specify the proxies indexed by proxy index. So we didn't yet create our proxy index, so we'll just make it just right now. So here I create the proxy index, and here I need to make sure it's using the global proxy index also. So okay, and okay, hold on guys, just hold on a sec. Okay, so of course I forgot to initialize proxy index equal to 0 here. Now we can create a response object and make a request, saying requests.get and the URL that we want to get the request for. Then we would add our parameters as well, but let's first link the proxy. So this request would be going through the proxy, and hence this would be faking our IP address from the perspective of the target server we're scraping data from. Okay, so I need simply to specify the proxies equals, and now the following format. So here I need to specify the HTTPS, and here HTTPS, and here I'll use this proxies indexed by proxy index. So in case if this succeeds, we can simply return our response. And also forgot to add the timeout here. So the normal timeout to consider is no more than 5 seconds. So if you specify less, it would be hard to find a proxy that would actually works within the 5 seconds, because they are all free and everybody out there is trying to make use of those proxies. So the timeout of 5 seconds is pretty enough. And also don't forget to enclose this sort of code into try catch sort of construct. So here we can simply say try, not the try catch, sorry, try except. It's Python, it's not Java. Okay, try except, and here we need to print that it was actually a bad proxy, and we need also to increment our proxy index by 1. So it would be using the next proxy during the next iteration. So I can simply say proxy index would be equal plus equals 1. And now all this kind of stuff should have been done within the loop. So basically I just want to say while proxy index is actually less than the length of the proxy, so make sure that we don't get into the error of using the index that is not available. So well, this seems like ready for test. So now let's actually try to test our fetch method here, our fetch function. So let's try to create a response that would be equal to fetch, and now let's provide the URL. So I say HTTPS. By the way guys, make sure if you're using HTTPS proxies, the link you're trying to request should be HTTPS as well. And if you're working with HTTP, then respectively you should have HTTP here, here, and in the proxy list itself, remember, like here, so you would be appending HTTP instead of HTTPS. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so HTTPS scraping kunfu.herokuapp.com and API/request. So okay, first okay, so basically I could have already do this using the proxy. Okay, and let's now try to print, as far as this sort of an API endpoint returns JSON format. Let me just quickly show you this one more time. So we just copy, paste, and go here. You'll see that it's kind of sort of a JSON format, and we don't need all the headers and probably data passed with the post request. We need only the IP and probably the URL to keep track of pagination when we'll be faking one. So but by now let's actually try to make use of inspected this sort of inspected IP address. So in order to do that, we can simply say print response.json, and this would be a type of Python dictionary, the return value of this particular expression here. And so we can use the keys to reference, use the key IP to reference the corresponding value. And I hold my breath in trying to run this stuff, and it might have taken some time, because connecting to proxies, especially with a 5 seconds timeout, might have taken some time. So let me just pause the record and wait until it results something in return. Okay, so here is our response, and you see that this proxy failed, this one failed as well, and this proxy actually works. So it tried to make an HTTP GET request from this kind of IP address, and this is the exact IP address being tracked by our API request, basically. So here we can also specify that well, let's call this remote address, just to make it clear that it's all about our kind of sort of so how our request is treated by the target server we're actually scraping. Okay. Another thing to consider here would be to provide some sort of string query parameters, so in order to fake a pagination during our request. So here I can specify params argument, and here we can also say params equals params. So the first params is the field name, the second one is the variable taken from the second argument from the fetch function here. And here actually, before making our request, we can specify our parameters that would be equal, say, well, just for testing purposes, so say the page would be equal to, say, 0 here. So like we're crawling somewhat a page here. And actually also let's specify also not only the remote address, but also, well, let's also print the URL that we're trying to retrieve the data from. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry guys, my cat's just going insane when I'm recording my videos. I have no idea why they're going so crazy during this process. They just starting crash everything around in their apartment. I'm really sorry for this, guys. So the second thing to consider here is actually we need to print the URL. Well, let's actually print simply just like an IP. And here we'll need to reference the URL respectively. So let's run this code one more time. Okay, so missing parameters to the fetch function here. So I say params equals to params. Okay. Also takes some time. Okay, guys, you know what? Probably even though, okay, so it just takes somewhat of time here. So again, we see that we've just fetched the data from this sort of URL endpoint, so page 0 in our case, and also we did use this sort of IP. So the very last thing to consider in order actually to provide the actual proxy rotation, we need to perform this kind of actions within the loop. But one sort of limitations regarding this particular programming environment is that for some reason, well, I don't know, probably someone a bug or something like that, but when I did test this within the loop, it didn't work that great. So let me just quickly grab this code and paste this into my local environment, and here I can simply say for page in range from 0 say to, we'll say to 4, like this, and I will be doing literally the same, but just specify the page here. So the URL would be showing like we're crawling the page by page here. Well, even though the endpoint won't really change, but that's kind of natural stuff. So still we're making different requests. So I just want to show you how the different requests would end up with a different sort of IP address being inspected during handling those requests. So if I just simply say here if I just run this app, okay, just probably need to save it first. Okay, so let's just see how this works in live mode. So here we're trying the proxy, so didn't retrieve any response. So bad proxy, trying another one. So this sort of a proxy rotation itself as well. So we're just rotating proxies until we get one working. So with this sort of proxy, so 123 to 120 242 actually works. So we see that this URL endpoint was actually did actually retrieve. It actually did use this sort of URL. Okay, I'm just wondering why it's okay. So yeah, it seems like proxies are being rotated correctly, while I have no idea why the page is always equals to 4. Oh, not 4. Of course, here I need to specify the page. Sorry, guys. So let me just. So you see that the proxy is being rotated correctly, but just I just missed the page. So let us run this one more time here. Okay. So the page 0 was fetched using the IP address 27.123.255.82, the one that actually fired here. So now the next page, so the page 1 will be already using another address. So here we see 123.220.242. So it's definitely different compared to this one. Okay. So the page 2 was fetched using another request, and the page 3 again, so 123. Okay, so for some reason, okay, just hold on a second, I need to find out this. Okay guys, so I've just realized why this happens. Well, that's because we didn't increment the proxy when we did succeed with our request. So if here I simply say proxy plus equals 1 as well, in this case this should work, I believe. Okay, let's try this one more time. So of course, yeah, we did have to oh, not the proxy. Oh, what am I doing? No, proxy index save. Okay, so proxy index should be incremented as well, not only when we have a bad proxy, but also when we have a good proxy. But for some reason you might want to make several requests from using one IP address, which is literally just fine. But the classical implementation is actually to use new IP address for every new request. So let's see this one more time. So the page 0 used the IP of 27.123.255.82. So let's move on again. Well, I hope that page 2 would use the different, and every next page would use the different as well. Okay, so here we got page 1, and the IP address is 191.97.38193. Okay, okay, a new IP address again for page 2. Okay, and for some reason he still did use the same address for okay, so let me just try one last step here. So let's try to actually increment this IP every time we make every time here. Okay, so just run this again. And by the way, guys, the benefit of using the dynamic scraper of fresh proxy lists shows that here okay, so probably we're using still the same, but if actually this kind of IP address is the proxy service would be updated in freeproxylist.net site, they also would be updated here within our program as well. So this kind of implementation allows us to fetch the freshest proxy servers out there, which is pretty nice. Okay, so we have IP address for the page 0. Okay, so we have another IP for page 1. Okay. We have another IP for page 2. Okay. And finally we have another IP for page 3 as well. Okay guys, so using the trial and error method, we finally realized that the right way to increment the proxy index is just after making the successful request in our page crawling part of our code. Okay guys, so this is kind of it regarding this video. I will put the link in the description to point into this sort of a source code, so you would be able to use the concepts presented in here in your own projects. It's probably not the best ever practices in the world regarding the regarding the proxy rotation technique, but still it's kind of good basis to kickstart off. So I hope you've learned something interesting from this video, and this is it from my side. So until next time, and take care.